Welcome to Crafting a Living. In today's show, we speak to Robert Mitchell. Now, Robbie is a serial entrepreneur, I believe is the word. He's created a number of landmark restaurants, pubs, businesses around South Africa, and I have known Robbie for at least 20 odd years, and I've always admired his business skills and the businesses that he's created, so I'm very excited to chat to him today. Let's welcome Robbie Mitchell. Welcome to Crafting a Living. Today I've got a very old friend and somebody that I admired for many years. When I started in the beer business in the 90s, Robbie was part of the KEG group, which had just started, and for us they were just an amazing outlet and an amazing new experience, and obviously an amazing customer. I just started working for Bavaria Brau, and we started installing our draft equipment in these outlets, and it was a completely new concept for us. So let's welcome to the show today, Robbie Mitchell.
Hello, Olga. Hello, everyone. Nice to be with you.
Welcome, Robbie. So, Robbie, you didn't start with the KEG. You obviously had some other businesses before that. Do you want to go back to that? Where did you start? Where are you from? Joburg?
Sure,
you're not a Durban boy.
Sure. No, originally from Durban and then Johannesburg.
Okay.
But, I schooled at General Smuts High School in Vereeniging. I was quite a mischievous young boy at school. Ashamed to say that I didn't finish. I didn't get my matric. Went off and did a tool and die apprenticeship.
Like one does in Vereeniging.
That's like one does in Vereeniging. Absolutely. But enjoyed it immensely. Then in 1977, a very good school friend of mine, Derek Myers, owned a small share of a steakhouse in Bryanston called Longhorn Steakhouse. And his partner was a pharmacist who was looking to play more golf as opposed to work in a restaurant. So I bought 10% of Longhorn Steakhouse in Bryanston.
Was it a standalone or a franchise?
It was a standalone, but part of another 3 stores which were owned by a bunch of guys. 3 or 4 years down the road, we managed to buy the partner out, who was his sleeping partner, and we took the store in those days from turning over 18,000 Rand a month to 70,000 Rand a month.
Wow, when what?
That was 1977, 78. Okay. Needless to say, it ended up a very lucrative business. And to cut a long story short, there were a bunch of guys at a Longhorn in Sandton City and a Longhorn in Caller Drive, and we got together, we formed a company called Longhorn Holdings, and then went on an expansion trail. By end of 83, 84, we had 10 Longhorn steakhouses, trading very well. In fact, in those days, Spur weren't represented in Johannesburg, so I'd say we dominated the family steakhouse market.
Okay, with liquor license and everything?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll tell you that in Bryanston in those days, you ran a queue 7 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Holger, I then went on, the 4 guys I was in business with were very keen to immigrate to Canada, which they subsequently did do. So I sold my equity and came down to Durban and opened Woodcutters in 1984.
The one in Westville?
Hillcrest first.
Hillcrest,
in 84.
Okay. And where was it?
It's just behind the Shell garage now.
Okay.
Traded very, very well. In 88 I opened Windermere Road, and in November 88 I opened Westville. And in 1990 I opened Lelucia. So I ended up with 4 woodcutter steakhouses when one of my ex-partners...
And Lelucia was in the mall?
Yeah.
With a hell of a high rent, or was it okay?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we ended up really struggling with that store. Holger, one of the partners who went to Canada, Derek Myers, was unhappy and showed interest in coming back and joining me. So I went to Canada, and while I was there, he showed me around, and we looked at different pubs and concepts. And Derek subsequently came back in, it was 88 to 89, and we had the 4 steakhouses, but we were looking to grow. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think in those days we were quite adventurous. We went to the food and restaurant show in Chicago. We researched there. We looked at different concepts. He had family in Canada that owned a chain of pubs. So we looked at those carefully. And, in 1990, I mean, it sounds crazy, but there weren't pubs in South Africa. A pub was part of
even 1980s?
1989.
Okay.
Yeah, a pub belonged to a hotel, and you had a men's bar and you had a ladies' bar.
Yeah, and on Sundays they couldn't sell booze if you didn't buy food.
Yeah, and a ladies' bar had the menu had to have so many egg dishes on it and so many soups and ridiculous. So we then went and bought Mongolian Barbecue on Florida Road. Converted it. It was originally going to be Joe Kools.
Was it part of the Mongolian in Pretoria, or
I think it was. Yeah.
Was it okay? Because I was going to say when I think I spent about a week or 2 weeks in Pretoria as a student in 1988 before I moved back to Natal. And I can remember on a Sunday night there was nowhere to drink, and we ended up in the Mongolian bar. I think it was cheap student food.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it was going to be Joe Kools, but anyway.
Where did Joe Kools, the name, come from?
When I was in Canada, I was taken by a liquor rep to a little town called London in Ontario. Student town, but with a good mix of business as well. And I was taken to a little diner, pardon me, called Joseph Kulowski's. Joseph Kulowski was a famous baseball player.
Okay.
But very interesting, in the window, there was a neon sign burning, and only the J-O-E and the K-O-O-L were burning. So it was referred to as Joe Kools.
Oh, cool.
So we opened our first keg, okay, which traded very, very well.
In Florida Road.
That's right. But at the same time, we had an eye on expansion.
So tell us about the keg. That was a first for South Africa.
It was a first, yeah. What you could call, a typical English pub.
Yeah.
For want of a better phrase.
Were there others around, or?
No, not at all.
Nothing like that, eh?
Yeah. So we had 4 woodcutters restaurants running, and we were getting interest shown from people wanting to take a woodcutters franchise.
Okay.
Derek and I thought the preferred route would be to rather franchise the keg.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was
1990.
Okay.
1990. We subsequently went on and ended up franchising 55 outlets.
Yeah. So mainly in Natal to start off with.
Initially in Natal, there were 16 stores in Natal, and those ranged from Newcastle down to Shelley Beach.
Yeah.
I think our second store was Pietermaritzburg, then Pinetown, then the Playhouse, and so it just
Umbila
grew.
Road. What was the one in Umbila called?
That was the Keg and Anchor.
So I must tell you a story. We had a German friend, a Siemens pastor, so he was the pastor to the seafarers, and he always referred to it as Mein Keg.
Mein Keg.
Not Mein Kampf, but Mein Keg.
Yeah.
So
That is quite an interesting story, because the Keg and Anchor was effectively owned by the Bears, as in the Bear furniture chain. They had assisted a young chap who'd worked for them at Game. They owned it was called the Inner Anchorage, I think, in those days, and it wasn't working. So they took a franchise and we converted it. But it was a very interesting journey. We ended up with
Who
offices.
was that guy? I'm just trying to recall his name. He was running it. The
Big guy called Ford, I think.
Okay.
But so between 91 and 97, we opened 55 outlets. Had offices in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban. We employed about 20 people at head office, and we thought we had a really good infrastructure. Our next move was to buy McGinty's from Southern Sun. I think McGinty's had developed this brand and was becoming problematic, and being a listed company, they couldn't really afford to get out there. So we bought McGinty's at a very discounted price, knowing that we'd have to close 50% of the outlets. Which we did. In the interim, we had opened Joe Kools and Durban Beachfront.
There's one thing we can't skip, and that's a beer culture that you created, and I want to give you the credit for that, because I think the keg played a big role in creating beer culture in South Africa. What do you think? I mean, if I can remember, I started working in the industry in 94 with Bavaria, but before that you already had started helping or working with the Mitchells, and you're not related to those Mitchells, but
Holger, no, not related, but you're absolutely right, and we missed that there. In those days, breweries weren't keen to really put beer on tap. And I think that's all you really could get was Castle. So we'd been down to see Lex Mitchell once or twice, and in fact had acquired the rights to distribute and brew Mitchells in KZN.
Okay.
The idea was to develop the market to about 12,000 litres a month, which according to our arithmetic warranted the investment of the brewery in those days. So we set about the little distribution warehouse at the back of Woodcutters.
I was there yesterday. I was delivering to Ultra Liquors, and I got lost, and I thought, I'm sure this is where the Mitchell's warehouse used to be with Marcus Pille and...
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Before Marcus's days. Even.
Okay.
So we were only really bringing the Raven Stout from Knysna, and that was going by Cape Town. The rest were being brewed in a Mitchell's brewery in Nelspruit, and the product was coming down on vegetable trucks overnight.
Wow.
We were growing the market quite nicely. We got to about 7,000 or 8,000 litres when Mitchell's in Nelspruit went into liquidation. We were then forced to bring the product from Mitchell's in Cape Town at a considerably higher cost.
Yeah.
And it really just wasn't feasible anymore.
And that was still before 1994.
Yeah, I think, if my memory serves me correct, I think we ended up losing about 240,000 that year, just on the Mitchell's venture.
Wow.
So we closed up shop and moved on. Needless to say, still with an eye on owning a brewery one day.
But you also did, you did a lot of work with the imported beers with NMK Schultz.
That's right, yeah, we did. We ran a very successful promotion called Drink Your Way Around the World.
And I love that.
That's right.
Not that I ever made it onto the wall, so tell us about the wall story.
But the original concept, Holger, was that you would we had 18 different beers, was that you would bring the consumer in on 18 different occasions. And drinking the beer from whatever country it was on that day was purely an experience. But we knew we would couple that with a meal and a few other drinks.
Yeah, so the idea was to drink 18 beers.
18 beers from 18 different countries.
And then you'd get a plaque on the wall.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we then launched Ladies Cocktail Cruise, a similar thing, where cocktails from 12 different countries around the world. So it was really a bit of a loyalty program, for want of a better word.
The other interesting thing that I remember, and sorry if I just interrupt you, is that the way you ran the stores, that there was always a managing partner who was, if you can share that, for me that was a very clever insight, and I remember it to this day, and especially with Martin Maltby in Maritzburg.
Yeah.
How did that work?
Absolutely. We wouldn't sell a franchise to a straight investor.
Yeah.
We insisted on 30% of the equity being owned by management or run and managed by the franchise owner.
Okay.
And I think, just you get that extra level of care and consideration. It's his business, it's his livelihood, he relies on it. And I think ultimately helps you acquire better results. And
what I remember as a reasoning was that people wanted to walk in the keg and see Martin or whoever, whatever his name was. They're coming home for like cheers, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
So they became places really were home from home. We were very, very hard on the customer relationship.
Yeah.
You weren't customers. We referred to you as guests.
Yeah.
And the whole training was about.
And patrons, didn't you start calling them patrons?
That's right. When they walk in there, treat them as if you're throwing a dinner party at home.
Yeah. And then you also introduced, and I want to make sure you get all the credit for this, you introduced the nonic glasses.
That's right.
Didn't you?
That's right. You're absolutely right, yeah.
Nobody else had those before.
No.
It was the beer jugs.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you brought in these pint glasses, which,
right.
For me, it was mind-blowing.
And I think that was after a trip to the UK and having a look around and doing some research there. But Holger, what I did forget to tell you was, in the early days of the first keg, when draft wasn't what it is today, we were selling 40 to 45 kegs of Mitchell's beer a week.
Yeah. So I can remember Marcus and myself, we had those little Toyota Stallions, and Marcus this was before, so Marcus had inherited one from Mitchell's, and he told me that he delivered a whole one of those vans completely overloaded to the Keg and Elephant every week in Maritzburg.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a very successful outlet.
Where John and, what was his wife called?
I know, but it was John and Tim Dunstan Smith.
Yeah, and Martin was kind of the manager.
That's right.
And Pippa.
Yeah, that's right, Pippa.
Yeah. Okay.
But, I'd like to say that I think over a period of time, the KEG group became like an extended family.
Yeah.
We ran a really good conference once a year. We ran a very successful golf day down at the Wild Coast.
I was going to say about the golf days.
Really
I lost a lot of balls at those.
Yeah, where the franchisees brought loyal customers. It was a lot of fun, and I think fun's a very strong element in business.
And how many of those guys are still in the restaurant trade? I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
Martin still owns a coffee shop, or has he sold it?
Recently sold, but I think is starting up again in Victoria Road. But a lot of them still actually have a finger in some way or another are involved in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And Derek Myers as well.
Yes, Derek's sitting with two butcher boys.
Okay.
One in Florida Road and one in Mshlonga. I think they trade very successfully. So.
And we always, one rumour, we didn't know anything in those days, and we obviously didn't mix with the big boys or the bosses, but the story was always Jonathan Bear invested in this one, Jonathan Bear invested in that one. Is that true?
So, Jonathan Bear invested in the Inner Anchorage, which became the Keg and Anchor. But I'll tell you, those were quite scary days because Jonathan ran the Bear Foundation, and Alec Rogoff was the director of Standard Bank, sat on the Bear Foundation, and we got summons to a monthly meeting by the Bears and Alec Rogoff to explain the financials of their outlet. So there was a lot of ducking and diving and looking for answers when the performance wasn't there.
And the one on the beachfront?
Yeah.
What was that called? Can you remember that one?
On the beachfront, I think it was the Keg and Jester.
Oh,
Maybe the correction.
I remember watching the Rugby World Cup there when we just launched the Guinness. Can you remember launching Guinness on tap?
What a remarkable brand, eh? Yeah,
what
a
was
remarkable
that?
brand.
With Bobby Skinstead.
That's right.
That's
right, he was a Guinness ambassador.
He was a Guinness ambassador.
That's right.
And I think it probably was restricted to the kegs.
I suppose if you look back, Holger,
94 it was, eh?
Yeah. There were a lot of things that were first on. If I tell you that you never got buffalo wings in South Africa.
No.
We'd seen that in America and brought it back and launched buffalo wings. Our big, huge homemade pies,
Oh, I love those,
first with pies. So, but like anything, I think, in fact, I don't think, food is fashion and concepts are fashion. And unless you're re-engineering yourself constantly, you're just not going to be part of the game.
Yeah.
So you've got to be looking at revamping every 5 years. You've got to keep it fresh. Everything from the way managers present themselves to the way stores look to menu engineering. It's a constant challenge.
Yeah. Why do you think places like, if I remember correctly, Bloemfontein and Harare did so well?
Holger, I don't think there was anything there.
Nothing else there.
Harare, Keg and Sable was a huge success.
Was that Ken's store?
That was Ian Miller.
Oh, okay.
Ian Miller, and then I forget who the Bloom franchisees were. Chappie used to do a radio program there as well, but and he is well connected with the cricket crowd. But you're right, there just wasn't anything else. I was perhaps starved of innovation. But at the same time we were growing Keg, strangely enough, we were fiddling around on a lot of other brands, which perhaps maybe if you look back retrospectively was detrimental.
Yeah.
We launched Joe Kools. There was an old Mexican restaurant down there. We went and bought it. In fact, there were no assets. The place had been stripped. The assets were sitting in a...
When did you open Joe Kools?
92.
It feels like it's always been there.
Yeah, 92. And, the first thing people said was, you can't spell cool with a K.
Yeah.
We said, well, exactly. You wanted to be controversial. We would always, when launching a new brand, we would always look, first and foremost, at your target market. What is your target market? So at Keg, we said it's 23 to 55, LSM 7, 8, or 9. At Joe Kools, it was quite simple. It's 18 to 25, okay? She goes out and looks for a partner. He goes out and looks for a partner. They both end up getting blind drunk. So it's simple. We said shit happens. Okay, and that's really what it was, just a place to really go and party hard.
Yeah, and what happened there every Sunday night? That was Joe Kools night.
So,
Sunday so the whole of Durban was in, or the whole of the Brewery was in Joe Kools on a Sunday.
used to run right the way down the beachfront. Okay. It was a lot of fun, but it didn't come without its risks.
Yeah.
Youngsters drinking, underage. So we found it quite a stressful business in the end, and I think that's why Derek and I sold it. We almost didn't know when it was going to make it on the front page of the newspaper that someone was peddling drugs or someone was doing this. We just felt in the end it didn't suit our profile. So we moved on. We then went and did... we converted. We'd sold off most of the woodcutter stores while we were growing KEG. We then felt that the Windermere store on the Brewery was still a good site. So we changed that to Billy the Bums.
Oh, that's right.
And
it must have been also some 95, 96?
Yeah.
Can you remember?
Holger, I think that was about 95.
Okay.
But what I forgot to mention to you was, with Joe Kools, in working with the ad agency, and the ad agency came up with, who is Joe Kools? Who is this guy? What is the character? And we created that. He's a self-made man. He sailed into town on a Chinese junk. He's got an old Mustang. He's doing it up himself. The bumper's still not back on. He does the panel beating himself. And I think youngsters identified with that. This guy does it on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Controversial. So the very first night we launched, we took the front page of the menu and tore the front page off. And the whole trick was when people came and said, oh my God, what's happened to the menu? So we must apologize, it's been banned. So immediately it appeals to the 18-year-old. This guy breaks rules.
Okay.
When we went on to do Billy the Bums, while being at the NRA, the Restaurant Association show in Chicago, we bought quite a few books on design and different concepts. And one of the books was on burger outlets. And there's a burger chain or outlet in America called Billy the Bums. So we sat down with Dale Tomlinson. And I don't think he'd started Hardy Boys in those days.
Ad agency.
And he said, who is Billy the Bum? We came up with this guy sitting in the back of the class. He's not quite keeping up with the class. And he's got his pencil and he's writing Billy the Bum, Billy the Bum, Billy the Bum. Why do they refer to me as Billy the Bum, Billy the Bum? So bums we turned into basic upmarket socialites. So who's a basic upmarket socialite? Okay. Well, she still goes out and gets drunk, but she sits on a bar stool with her legs crossed. So we say elegantly wasted. Sorry, not drunk, elegantly wasted.
Yeah.
All right. And the target market there was that sort of 25 to 35 with a little bit of elegance. And I think Joe Kools was the first, Billy the Bums was the first cocktail bar in South Africa.
It certainly made waves.
Yeah, that's right.
And everybody was very cool that hung out there.
There we go.
But that Windermere Road was quite trendy in those days. I mean, there were some other interesting restaurants there.
They did open down the road after us, you're right, I forget their names, but I think one of the Marco Nico's, El Turco, El Mexicano, but it soon became quite an exciting area, so, and at the same time we went and launched an Italian restaurant called La Laconda. What was La Laconda? I'm still not even sure, but I know on the first day we were due to open that night, we invited 50 people for dinner. We asked them each to bring their own knife, own fork, own wine glass and own plate. Okay, so we ended up with 50 different plates, knives, forks.
Did you keep them?
Yeah, absolutely. Took a pot of spaghetti, threw it on the ceiling. What stuck? Okay, so it was crazy stuff. They were very exciting times, and it was all about maybe just trying to be first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And Florida Road, you had a keg there as well?
Yeah, we kept that as a company store.
Okay.
For most of our...
obviously, that's original keg.
That's right, yeah. That's where we used to experiment.
But then Florida Road wasn't... I mean, you started the trend in Florida Road, or was there other stuff happening?
There was nothing. There was, I think there was a nightclub that Bob Humphreys owned, and that was it. So we took a lot of flack from residents in the area. Okay, there were a lot of meetings. They didn't like the idea of putting a pub in the Florida Road or another restaurant. But over a period of time, we overcame it. Yeah. And, it's a story. It's an interesting story.
Yeah. So did you do anything with Bob Humphreys? I remember he had that place on the waterfront.
Yeah, no, not at all. We weren't involved with Bob.
Oh, okay.
Not at all. I think he went and opened something called
Thirsties,
that's right.
Yeah.
No, Holger, we had Joe Kools, Lolaconda, Billy the Bums. We got the 55 kegs, as I said, the 24 McGinty's. So there was a stage where we actually had 80 restaurants.
Wow. And what was the concept called that you opened on the Bluff? Can you remember that?
That's right. We thought it would come
mini keg or something.
It was the Lighthouse Inn. We thought there were certain areas that weren't strong enough to carry a keg and the royalties that we derived from it. So we developed a little brand called... It was called Empire Pubs, I think.
Yes.
And the idea was, like Places of the Bluff, that couldn't carry a full keg and a full keg fit-out, that we would go and do the Whale House or the Lighthouse Inn or the Slug and Lettuce or the Honest Lawyer. Okay.
And was Guy Kluwer involved with that?
No, Guy wasn't.
Who was
Guy
that?
at that stage was managing the Keg and Thistle for us.
Okay.
Then he worked for us at head office for a while. Then left to go and join Mike Lambert, who was a franchisee of ours, and they took a News Cafe franchise in Silverton Road.
Okay.
And Guy's subsequently been very successful.
With Lupo and a couple of others.
Absolutely, yeah. Really good restaurants.
Okay.
But, Holger, it was a lot of fun. And I think come 97, we started to see a few cracks appearing. One or two stores where we'd made the mistakes, I mean, can you imagine going to a place like Paarl and opening a keg and putting under the banner traditional English pub in a place like Paarl?
And they can't spell it.
Absolutely.
They can't spell keg.
Ludicrous, yeah.
How do you say keg in Afrikaans?
Yeah.
Keg. Because
And they don't do English either. Okay?
Exactly.
So there were a few stores that were starting to struggle.
Yeah.
Derek and I discussed it at length. Strange enough, we've been asked by Spur Corp, if we were interested in selling. We'd gone down and had a meeting with them. And at the same time, we were approached by King Consolidated Holdings.
And who were they?
A guy called Dennis Finch and Cliffy Cravenstein. It was a listed company. They owned Mark's Kitchen and the Rib Factory. And Derek and I thought we were very, very fair with what we did. We sat down with our management and said that we were interested in selling. I'm still not sure why. Okay. And it wasn't a case of it being sold to the highest bidder. We would sell it to the company that the management wanted to go to. So we let them make the choice. All right. They decided that Johannesburg was the right place. And that was perhaps maybe driven by Kevin Hedwick, who was MD of our company at that stage.
Okay.
We all know how Kevin's gone on to achieve great success.
With famous brands.
Absolutely.
And I remember Kevin as, I think, the SAB draft rep, wasn't
That's
he?
right. Yeah, he came from SAB days. He then bought a keg from us.
Okay.
I think we got a bit frustrated with his growth. Bought the Keg and Rose in East London. Ran that for a year or two, sold that. We very, very early on saw the potential in Kevin and brought him across and asked him to run the company for us, realising that it had to become corporate. And neither I or Derek had that kind of experience. Holger, so we sold the Keg in end of 97, sold Joe Kools, sold off the rest of the brands. Then Derek and I kind of went our own ways, and I opened 4 red pepper stores, which really didn't work. I think I was ahead of my time. You walked into these stores. I'd seen a concept in Vancouver that I liked, and it really, you could say I was trying to emulate it. And it was really playing on restaurant theatre where you could see the whole kitchen.
Okay.
But I'm going back 97, so 20 years ago, people are doing it today. But 20 years ago, people walked in, the first comment was, why can we see the kitchen? Why didn't you build a wall there? So I realised I was just too far ahead of the game.
And were those in Durban?
Yeah. One in Johannesburg, I think the rest in Durban. 2 in Johannesburg, 2 in Durban.
Okay.
We then opened a restaurant called Pistachios, which was a Mediterranean restaurant, and I brought a chef out from Prussia's in London, the most famous Moroccan restaurant in the world. Once again, people didn't understand tagines and that kind of stuff, so it was just ahead of my game. Changed that to Lorenzo Mark's Cafe, and it tripled in turnover. So here again, I'd made 2 fatal mistakes in misreading the market.
And again in Durban?
Correct. They were both in Kloof. I then went and bought the Station Tavern, and I converted it to Stokers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a landmark now.
Yeah, I think it is, eh?
It is.
Yeah. And the colours were copied from the Red Lion in a small town in England. I then went and did Station Masters Arms and Hillcrest.
Just with the Stokers, I mean, did you also try and do the big draft selection and beer selection?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Because now it's pretty limited. I mean,
is it, Holger?
Yeah, I think he's got the Vintage brands and the Guinness and the SAB brands, but there's not much else.
Yeah, that's shame, eh?
In fact, tonight we're going to go to the launch of the tank beer. SAB's invested a lot of money in there and installed one of those tanks.
I'm told so. Let's actually pop across and have a look at that, eh?
Yeah, so the launch is tonight. Yeah. I mean, they're obviously selling it already, but the official launch is tonight.
Yeah, Holger, we on average used to have, I think, 12 taps on the counter.
Which was new in those days.
Yeah, very much so. And I think part of the attraction, eh?
Yeah. No, I mean, if you go into a bar in Cape Town, nobody's got less than 12.
Yeah. So I went on, did 2 station pubs.
So in Hillcrest and in Kloof.
In Kloof, yeah. I then...
and you could never get the one in Gillets?
No. Tried. Had first rider refusals.
Why was that? What is wrong with that building?
It sat between 2 prop net and Spoinet Property Management Services, and there was a scrap going on between those two
So red tape.
Those 2 administrative bodies. So we then converted the Red Pepper in Westwell to Waxy O'Connors.
Okay.
I'd like to think another landmark.
Another landmark, definitely.
Yeah, and we did Molly Malone's in Johannesburg.
That's also still going.
4 ways, yeah, and Rosie O'Grady's out near Tambo Airport.
Okay.
In the interim, I was aware that when we had the KEG group, that the Firkin group had gone into liquidation. So I was quite interested in the brand. So I made some inquiries and knew that Ned Enterprise were the major creditor. So I got hold of the liquidators who handled the liquidation of Firkin and bought the Firkin brand back from the liquidators.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a joke. I paid 5,000 rand.
If you say you bought it back, but were you involved in it?
I bought the Firkin brand back, and then my son and his partner bought the Firkin on the roof of the pavilion.
Okay. Do you give us some background on that Firkin?
Yeah, I mean, Holger, I think there used to be 12 Firkins.
Yeah.
And there were small breweries around the country. Okay, they were really, really pretty, but I think they'd been put in places with full retail rentals, and they just couldn't carry it.
But how could you get a license to brew in the pavilion? I could never work that out.
Interesting, but I always had my eye on the brewery, which we subsequently bought. I then bought an old Firkin brewery from Lusaka, moved it down to Durban, bought the brewery out of the Firkin.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the Firkin brand, and the idea was...
But you didn't own the restaurant?
My son and his partner did.
Oh, okay.
So it was a franchise, so I was getting a royalty.
Okay.
And the idea was to try and roll out Firkins as a brand. So Fox and Firkin, Philly and Firkin. Yeah. But it never really took off, I think.
And is that where the beer brands come from?
No. I developed the beer brands subsequently.
What were the brands in the Firkin?
It was just Firkin Lager, Firkin Ale. So, Holger, we then went on...
Do you still own that brand? Do you still own the Firkin brand?
No.
Okay.
Funny enough, I sold it a year ago.
Okay.
To the gentleman who's bought the Firkin, Sizwe.
Okay.
So the assets, the actual brewery and the brewery from Lusaka now sit up in Hilton.
Okay.
They're called Old Man Brewery. So it's a significant size. It's got 17 by 1,000 litre fermentation vats.
Mm-hmm.
We then went on and developed the brands which you're aware of: Fox Lager, 1806 Real Ale, Honey Badger Imperial Stout, Oyster Catcher IPA, and we're about to launch a cider called Hummingbird. So it's been a journey. We've been doing it for 8 years and we haven't made any money yet. You heard that before?
Yeah, I've heard that before. So did you start Old Man Brewery 8 years ago?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And did you were you involved in the brewing at the Firkin?
No,
Never.
I got an old retired SAB brewer called Paul Sims,
who
brings with him all the technology, recipes, and know-how.
Yeah.
And I also use a gentleman who's a professor at Maritzburg University called Hans. I'm not sure of his surname at this stage. Hans has done 2 6-month brewing stints in Berlin. To qualify to do a Bringston in Berlin, he had to work in a brewery for a year.
Okay.
So he's been assisting with our brew for a year, then went to Berlin for 6 months, came back for another year, went to Berlin again. So we draw on Hans extensively in his knowledge of particularly lagers and the way Germans do them.
Yeah.
So yeah, Holger, it's been a lot of fun. It's
So you've got the Old Man Brewery, which is in the old Crossways.
correct.
Yeah. Which was also a landmark.
Student landmark, as I'm sure you know. Weren't you at Maritzburg
I was at
Varsity?
Maritzburg Varsity. I even had my bachelor party at the Crossways, which it was one of my favourite haunts with Sean. I can even say it was one of my best customers as a Bavaria rep. We used to cart tons of Bavaria up there with all the pensioners, I guess, from Howick drinking there.
Yeah, that's right.
And then obviously now it's called Old Main Brewery, and it's changed a little bit. You've got the brewery in the restaurant.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's been a long journey. So you're one of the pioneers even in the brewing. Never mind the restaurant business.
Holger, I think if I look back and realise how difficult it would have been, I'm not sure if I would have done it. But I'm in it now, and I've got to take the best out of it.
Yeah.
I'm still very excited about craft beer and its future in South Africa. There's a lot still to be done, I think, on packaging, marketing, which is a complete new science to us. As you'll know, we're just used to opening a restaurant and people either coming in or not coming in and paying when they leave. So brewing beer, getting product to market, and telling the story is a science.
It's a different story.
And there's been a lot of, I'm not going to say mistakes along the way or failures, because I call it falling forward.
Yeah, lots of lessons.
But there's been lots of lessons.
Yeah. I mean, you and I spent a couple of days in Joburg when you launched your bottles, and I was pleasantly surprised, and I say that without wanting to sound negative, because the market is really cluttered, and you launched your bottled beer last year. You did homework, you did a proper label. I mean, you got a proper agency in to do the labels, and it's really been received very well, I think. I mean, as another bottled beer on the shelf, at Hillcrest we nearly have 500 different beers, and yours still move off the shelf.
Yeah, thanks, Holger. Yeah, still getting orders from Johannesburg on a weekly basis.
Okay.
Hopefully trying to break our way through very slowly.
Yeah, and you don't do any draft beer anymore?
No, Holger, but I think we're at the stage right now where we realise, and strangely enough, it was brought to my attention by a meeting I was having with a coffee roaster. And we got chatting about roasting coffee and getting product to market, he has exactly the same challenges as what we have as brewers or people who run their own breweries. He then came up with the phrase, "You've got to own the wet sale," which is absolutely appropriate. So it's got me thinking, we have no choice now but to go out and open 2 or 3 of our own small outlets.
Okay.
So playing with a few different names, something like a Smith & Walensky's or a Crockett & Jones. I know that's a shoe name, but here again it's 2 personalities, so you can build a story around the personalities. But the idea is something very straightforward, serve a nice pedestal de nachos, serve a really good burger, serve some gourmet pizzas, like pancetta, blue cheese and fig. That kind of stuff, different, not the normal.
Yeah.
But a small range, small menu, maybe even order from the counter. I feel very strongly that restaurants as we see them today in South Africa are going to be forced to re-engineer.
Okay.
I've just come back from 2 weeks in Australia, and if you look at how effectively they use labour in Australia, or for that matter Europe or the UK, we're going to be forced to go exactly the same way.
With the labour, yeah.
So I think big sit-down restaurants are going to become challenging with the costs they carry.
Yeah.
So that's a project we're working on right now.
Okay. So, but you definitely believe that you've got your own word for it or your own term. I mean, Peter Dean has said it time and again, we don't need more breweries, we need more brew pubs, I guess.
There we go.
So...
more outlets.
Yeah, so you need your own outlets. You need to sell your beer at 70 rand a litre instead of whatever
25 rand
25 rand a litre.
Holger, you've hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
And for young brewers starting off, what would you say? Give them some tips. or even restaurateurs or brew pub owners.
My advice to someone wanting to get in the brew industry is really go and study what Darling have done and Jack Black. And we're all well aware of the fact that neither of those brands own breweries till they had significant market share.
Okay.
So work on your labels, get something that's really pretty and nice looking, your packaging.
Yeah.
Okay. Go and appoint a contract brewer, and then work on getting product to market.
Yeah.
Once you've got market share, then invest in a brewery.
Yeah. I mean, it was always my dream to start my own beer brand when I worked for Bavaria in the 90s, but in those days there was no opportunity. I mean, Bavaria did one contract brew or two. I know that they brewed Laurentina, which I think was Bavaria with a yellow sticker.
Yeah, that's right.
They brewed it for George Pagan, who owns Wines of the World, and he actually owned the Laurentina brand, and he sold it to SAB. No,
did the beer sell well in South Africa?
Not really, no. And then obviously the other contract brew was for Mitchell's when they did with Andy Mitchell, did some contract brewing there.
Okay.
If you remember that, I don't know where the beer went, but I think the bottling didn't work for Mitchell's.
Holger, there's been much like the restaurant industry and the small craft brewing industry. There's been a lot of accidents, and I think there's still going to be a lot of accidents. So there's another opportunity for something wanting to get in the industry, is go and find out who's struggling.
And buy the second-hand equipment.
Yeah, if you feel you can add value.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think it was you who told me that, Peter Dean, funnily enough, that having been to a craft brewers conference in America 2 years ago, that 23% of the beer market in America today is sold by way of craft breweries. Which is significant, eh?
It is a big number. I think we're a long way from that, but certainly the opportunities are there. I mean, red tape or the government isn't on our side. They don't seem to want us to sell our own beer or open brew pubs. And where can people enjoy your beer at the moment? Just at Crossways, most of the bottle stores?
Yeah, Holger, just at Crossways. We're in about 20 tops, peddling away there. We are looking at a site in Belita and a site in Hillcrest for our new concept. So hopefully we'll get some traction there.
Okay, great. It's been a long walk, Robbie. I mean, we started supplying your store, or I started working for Bavaria, and maybe we didn't talk about that part. I still love. I mean, for me, the biggest memories of the KEG are the variety of beer that you had and the variety of draft. So it's been a long walk. I mean, 94 to now is 23 years ago. I started in the beer business, and you were already there and reinventing the industry.
It looks like neither of us have grown up because we're still doing the same stuff. But Holger, I think you've got to take a lot of credit for the way draft and beer and different beer brands have grown in South Africa. When I still see your blue Mercedes around Cliff today, it's quite remarkable because I remember you pulling a trailer and delivering beer yourself. That's probably why you're the size you are. Okay, but I mean, you're an exceptionally hardworking man. I must pay you. In fact, I must give you credit for what you do for craft beer in South Africa. Yeah. Without you, it wouldn't be what it is today.
Thank you. And it was nice chatting to you, and we'll catch up again soon. I look forward to your new ventures, and I'm sure it's too early to talk about them, but it sounds very exciting.
Thanks, Olga. Thank you for the opportunity of telling my story.
Okay, lovely. Nice chatting.
Okay.
Cheers. Thank you, Robbie. Wow, what a lovely story. And I just can't believe that there are so many landmarks that Robbie was involved in. Just look at places like Waxy O'Connors, Stokers, the one in Hillcrest, Station Masters, and now Crossways and Old Main Brewery, Firkin, the Kegs, Woodcutters, so many wonderful places, and I've got so many memories servicing these customers, but also not only servicing and selling to them, but also enjoying the odd beer there. So it's so great to talk to Robbie, and it's wonderful to work with him. Guys, and if you are in the business of brewing beer, making beer, distilling, if you're a brand owner and you need help with your sales of your product, please feel free to give me a call. That's what I do. I help people look for distributors, understand the whole route to market. Feel free to give me a call, and I look forward to seeing you in the trade. Cheers.